Not going to make fun of Pam Bondi for the strongly worded letter that she sent to Tim Walz and Tim Walz's response to that strongly worded letter. But I will bring up a clip today. I listened to Caroline Leavitt's press conference talking about primarily Minnesota and then taking questions. I think it's not an exaggeration. Caroline Leavitt, I think, is the best press secretary in my memory. I like Sean Spicer as well. And I could acknowledge that Jen Circleback Psaki, that's not how you pronounce her name, it's Psaki, but I could acknowledge that Jen Psaki was a good press secretary insofar as she really lied with ease. And I have no doubt that people look at Caroline Leavitt with the same degree of disdain, just based on their political prejudice or their political bias. Jen Psaki could lie like it was water on a duck's back. She had an ability of never answering a question and always circling back to it, but never ever really circling back to the question. What's her face? Jean-Karine? You know what I'm talking about. Jean-Karine Pierre? Jean, whatever her name is, was the worst press secretary of all time because in addition to being a bad liar, she was painfully stupid and could just not even do the propaganda role that she was hired to do. Caroline Leavitt is objectively good. I think she's direct. I do believe that she is as transparent as you could ever expect anyone to be in government. And even in today's press conference, was not peddling lies in order to cover for arguably some missteps when it comes to the responses to the shooting in Minnesota. Now, I'll play this one real quick because this is getting into the breaking news of the day, which is Trump is deploying Tom Homan to Minnesota. And then the question is, should people take that as an indication that he's frustrated with maybe some of the off-the-cuff, inaccurate statements coming from Kristi Noem? Before we even get there, in her intro monologue, which I'm still, did it upload? It might have uploaded. Yeah, it's up there now. In her intro, she gave a 6.5-minute intro. And, people were asking, I think it was in one of the, in response to a question, it might have been in her intro statement, but, people said things which were not entirely accurate of the description of the events. And now she's saying that Trump wants to take a step back, and his statement is we're going to assess the evidence. And the question was, why did some people seemingly speak before any sort of investigation or say things which might be more or less tenable as relates to an actual factual observance of what went down in Minnesota? And her answer was Trump, his statements, and I speak for him. I don't speak for Kristi Noem. I don't speak for Stephen Miller. He's going to await an investigation before commenting and assess what's going on. But bottom line, it's a tragedy that nobody wants to see. And that should be the talking point. Not FAFO, not haha, not we're in charge now. It's a tragedy that nobody wants to see. Trump doesn't want to see people dying in Russia any more than in Ukraine. He doesn't want to see people dying on the streets. And even if they are putting themselves in situations where that likelihood becomes extremely more enhanced, nobody should be relishing in this. Now, with respect to Homan being called up now, this was her answer. Diplomatic, and you can read into it how you want.
With regards to the deployment of Tom Homan to Minneapolis, should the deployment of Mr. Homan to Minneapolis be seen as a sign that the president is dissatisfied with how the officials on the ground had handled the incident?
No, Mr. Homan is doing an exceptional job, and he has been working with Secretary Noem and President Trump over the course of the last year. Secretary Noem still has the utmost confidence and trust of the President of the United States, and she's continuing to oversee the entire Department of Homeland Security and all of the immigration enforcement that's taking place across the whole entire country. Of course, Secretary Noem is also in charge of FEMA, and we are in the wake of a brutal winter storm where hundreds of thousands of Americans have been impacted by that. So Borders Are Homan is in a unique position to drop everything and go to Minnesota to continue having these productive conversations with state and local officials. And I know that he's catching a plane in just a few hours to do just that at the request of the president. Jennifer.
That's diplomatic. Why is Homan going? Well, Kristi Noem is also in charge of FEMA, and she's needed for this storm. We talked about this yesterday during the show. Robert Barnes, what's amazing is I'm doing various polls on various platforms. Barnes' take on the shooting is that it's unjustified. My take on the shooting is that it's predictable under those circumstances. And It's what happens when idiot activists think that they're going to play street cop in the face of what they perceive to be an injustice by the actual cops, intervene, carrying a gun. Within 3 seconds, things escalate to someone being shot dead on the streets. That's not to say FAFO. It's to say you make certain decisions and you increase the likelihood of, I wouldn't even say unforeseeable, disproportionately severe consequences, but that are nonetheless foreseeable. Now, one of the things that Robert and I talked about last night is that this was not the strategy that Tom Homan even wanted in the first place. Go after criminals, go after convicts, don't go door to door. I'm being a little bit hyperbolic in the description. Don't go through the streets, especially in hostile territory where you're getting local state law enforcement support. By all means, go ahead. But apparently Homan wasn't really down with this method of doing it, precisely because it can lead to these outcomes, which then frustrate your ability to continue arresting and deporting illegal criminal aliens. And people are saying, the response to this cannot be stop with the deportations. And nor is anybody really saying that. The question is, how do you go about achieving that end goal, that end objective, without giving the PR to the left that they have gotten, that they're going to run with, and that frustrate your ability to follow through with that election promise? So now, with all that said, Homan is heading up to Minnesota, and Caroline Levin. I want to bring up actually the statement that she made in her intro statement, which basically said, Trump spoke with Walz and they had a productive conversation. And Trump laid out certain demands. Like, look, nobody wants to be in the streets having these escalations. Nobody wants to be fanning the flames of division, to use the cliche. But one thing is for certain, let's start with the basics. You're going to give us the people that you have in custody. You're going to give us the people that you have in jail currently, in state police, and you're going to cooperate with us and give us people that you've detained and continue to detain who are illegal aliens, especially the violent criminals. And if you don't do that, we don't have much to talk about.
As a result of that defiance, 2 Minnesotans have now tragically lost their lives on the streets of Tim Walz's state. And then thirdly,
here we go.
Over all criminal elites this morning, and he has outlined a clear and simple path to restoring law and order in Minnesota. Number 1, Governor Walz, Mayor Frei, and all Democrat leaders should turn over all criminal illegal aliens currently incarcerated in their prisons and jails to federal authorities.
I want to just point out the obvious. I have no relation to Jacob Frei that I know of. I think if we go back 5,000 years, we might have some common ancestry. My last name is Freiheit, not Frei, and now I can barely say Viva Frei without hearing Jacob Frei. Give us all of your criminals, period. That's not even too much of an ask. How you don't have state cooperation with federal law enforcement for state criminals who also happen to be federal criminals, how that is not just a rule, not just for immigration issues, for all crimes, makes no sense. You want to talk about insurrection, it would be protecting federal criminals in state custody from the feds. That would be insurrection. And I'm going to give you my punchline after all of this. So the number 1, you don't need a strongly worded letter from Pam Bondi. You need a telephone call from the president of these United States of America, Donald John Trump. Hey, Timmy boy, Tampon Tim, go get those criminals, even the ones that are in the male prison cells that have tampons in there, and give us your inmates convicted on state crimes who are also illegal aliens, period. Criminals by definition.
Along with any illegal aliens with active warrants or known criminal histories for immediate deportation. Number 2, state and local law enforcement must agree to turn over all illegal aliens who are arrested by local police.
Can you believe that this is the discussion that we have to be having, not just in 2026, in any realm of a functioning society, that state law enforcement, if they pull someone over for DUI, rape, assault, if they arrest somebody and they find out that they're an illegal alien, they're going to refuse to comply and collaborate with the feds. They will also make sure not to even ask these questions, because don't ask, don't tell. If we don't know, we don't have to comply. We live in an era where Democrats are actually saying, at least some, Kathy Hochul, Gretchen Whitmer. I'm not sure about Whitmer. I don't want to put words in her mouth. If we arrest people, we're not going to try to find out if they're illegal aliens either, because we want to protect criminals. Period. Full stop. There's no other explanation to it. So 2 pretty reasonable demands. Give us the criminals you have in jail. And on a going forward basis, when you pull people over, if you arrest further people who are criminals, you'll turn them over to us. What's the third one?
And then thirdly, local police must assist federal law enforcement in apprehending and detaining illegal aliens who are wanted for crimes, especially violent crimes. If Governor Walz and Mayor Frei implement these common sense cooperative measures that I will add have already been implemented in nearly every single other state across the country, Customs and Border Patrol will not be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota. ICE and local law enforcement can peacefully work together, as they are effectively doing in so many other states and jurisdictions.
You can pause it here. I don't think we need to play the rest of that. This seems pretty reasonable. It seems pretty logical, but logic and reason have never been the hallmark traits of the left. I mean, sure, you want to say there's some conservatives who are just as dogmatic. Fine. This is basic common sense. And the funny thing is, we play PR wars, sounds bites and audio clip, whatever the heck the expression is. It's a game of words, and if you control the meaning of words, you control the conversation. There is no such thing as a sanctuary city or a sanctuary state. Call it what it is, an insurrectionary city and an insurrectionary state, and treat them as such. If you have state law enforcement, local law enforcement, saying we are a sanctuary city or a sanctuary state for illegal criminal aliens, because they might not be violent criminals, but they are by definition criminals. You can only argue the degree to which. If you have states and cities saying we provide sanctuary to criminals, especially the violent criminals, that's not a sanctuary city. That is an insurrectionist city. That is an insurrectionist governor who is basically saying to the feds, we're at war with you now. And the boots on the ground in our war against you are going to be the illegal criminal aliens that we not only don't facilitate you arresting and taking out of here, but that we actively protect. And if you come in here to try to do it yourself, well, we're going to give the dog whistles to the activists and the radicals and the Antifa and the heavily financed, I'd say mildly organized activists. And we're going to empower them to go out in the streets, interfere with your law enforcement. And then if and when they get bullets in them, we're going to parade them like the martyrs that we need them to be so that we can continue with this PR battle that is lubricated with the blood of people who are also sufficiently radical that they can be radicalized and used as useful idiots. So that's it. Insurrectionist states and insurrectionist cities. Call it what it is. And speaking of which, did you hear this? It was, it was Kathy Hochul. This is, by the way, just bear in mind also what happened on January 6th when Capitol Police never turned down the National Guard that they were never offered, and it was Donald Trump's fault for the Fedsurrection because he didn't bring in the National Guard even though he offered it and they never accepted it, but it was his fault. Bring in the National Guard, authoritarian, declaring martial law. Don't bring in the National Guard. You never brought in the National Guard, even though it was offered and they said no. Kathy Hochul, a woman who belongs in jail. Like she's a Dr. Mengele with an uglier smile. A woman who promotes that toxic COVID shot on babies 6 months and older. She came out and effectively denied assistance for this storm that they're going through because of politics. From Fox News, New York County exec blasts Governor Hochul for rejecting federal storm aid over ICE enforcement concerns. That's right. We don't need help with our ICE until you eliminate the ICE. I mean, I don't know. Nassau County's Bruce Blakeham calls governor's move foolish as snow and freezing rain create dangerous conditions. They don't care. They do not care if they kill you. Like Tom McDonald said, and I say it all the time, they will kill you, then they'll broadcast it and make it the news. Oh my goodness, we didn't get any federal assistance. We offered it, Pharma Kathy. We offered it, Hacky Hochul. And you said no. Nassau County exec Bruce Blakeman blasted New York Governor Kathy Hochul for rejecting federal assistance. By the way, is she the favorite in New York right now? for rejecting federal assistance over the weekend, arguing that unhelpful politics are interfering with public safety. No shit, Sherlock. We need the federal government's help when we have a major emergency event like we do now, Blakeman said Sunday, referring to the winter blast. I think it's foolish part of Governor Hochul. She doesn't care. She gets everything that she needs and she won't have a problem. What does she write on X? Here, I'll show you what she wrote on X. We don't need the help, and when people die, then we'll still find a way to blame it on Trump. Here, this is what she wrote on X. Secretary Noem offered assistance to New York ahead of the impending snowstorm. I shared that the fastest way to help is for ICE to back off so people feel safe accessing warmer centers, shelters. How many, does she think everybody who needs to hit a shelter, is it illegal? Thanks for the glib, flippant response, you stupid idiot who's supposed to represent a state. And if New Yorkers die as a result of the storm due to lack of assistance that was offered, Kathy Hochul will turn around and blame Trump. Democrats love causing death and misery, then exploiting that death and misery for their own political profit. Like they did with Pretti, the guy who just got killed, like they did with Renee Good, the woman who just got killed, like they did with the events of January 6th, blaming Brian Sicknick's death initially on a mob of Trump supporters. They lie about it also. And then they exploit the lies. The lies linger, especially with the vulnerable, brain-dead base that still supports that monster Kathy Hochul. And they'll use it as political fodder. People died because we didn't get any federal assistance. Oh, when I said no, when I was being glib, you were supposed to give it anyhow. Because like a spoiled child that I am, I get to shit all over you, the feds, and still get the assistance that I said no to because I know you're a good father. And I get to, like a spoiled teenager, yell at you and swear at you, but I still expect you to come take care of me when I drink too much, despite having been, told not to drink too much. Like the people who supported Andrew Cuomo, mass murder, which, kind of made the endorsement of Cuomo against Mamdani a little bit of a problem. That is what's going on now. Homan is going up. Whether or not you think it's because Trump is losing faith in Kristi Noem, what's good to see is Homan coming back into the fore. Tough but fair is the only way you can describe Homan. If it's true that Kristi Noem had sidelined Homan or disregarded his strategic advice on how to go about catching illegals and arresting them, detaining them, and deporting them, we've seen the consequences of that right now. Maybe it's time to bring Homan back up. Start listening to the people who show good judgment, both in life strategically and as relates to anecdotes they share about killing their dogs. I defended Kristi Noem at the time when that story broke. I was like, look, we got our dog from a farmer. It was an old English Mastiff. And the farmer told us, when his parents got too big and his father got too old, it's like, you're not going to haul a 240-pound dog around. The farmer dug a hole, brought the dog over, shot the dog, and rolled him into a pit. That's how it works in some places. But you don't brag about it. I mean, it's one thing to do that which is necessary. It's another thing to have the bad judgment to brag about it. Not everybody's going to go and drive 2 hours to a vet, do the whole euthanasia thing, cremate their dog, keep their ashes in a bag. Not everybody. I do it only because I don't think I could bring myself to shoot a dog, even if it needed to get shot. So maybe it's time to bring someone in with a bit better judgment and a bit better tactical strategy as to how to tackle this problem, which is now causing more problems than it should and is now causing more political strife than it ought to have ever done, because this was a very politically popular plan of action. It was a politically popular policy, arguably the one that got Trump elected in the first place. Secure the border and find a way to deport the 10 to 20 plus million illegal aliens, especially the ones who have committed violent crimes that have taken the lives, killed Americans. Trump to send border czar Tom Homan to Minneapolis as outrage over petty shooting. You can tell this is from ABC News. The framing of, depending which outlet you're reading, is fantastic. And you don't read this crap for anything closely related to accuracy. You read this to see how the enemy is describing the situation. President Donald Trump announced Monday he is dispatching his border czar, Tom Homan, to Minnesota amid outrage over the fatal shooting of Alex Pretti. by federal agents. I'm sending Tom Homan. He has not been involved in that area, but knows and likes many of the people there. Tom is tough but fair, will report directly to me, not directly to Christie, directly to Trump. He wrote in the social media post. Trump in another social media post called him a request to work together, yada. Trump said he would have Homan call Walz and that Walz was happy that Homan was going to Minnesota. White House press secretary, she held the briefing today. We covered a little bit of that. By putting Homan in charge of ICE operations in Minneapolis, Trump is bypassing the normal chain of command where Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino have been overseeing ICE operations. Trump said Homan would report directly to him. Later on, he says, I don't like any shooting. I don't like it. Trump told the Wall Street Journal, but I don't like it when somebody goes into a protest and he's got a very powerful, fully loaded gun with 2 magazines up with bullets. That doesn't play good either. The administration is facing criticism from both Democrats and some Republicans for blaming the victim of the shooting, with some Republican lawmakers calling for an independent investigation. Go ahead and investigate it, by the way. I don't know what the details are with Alex Pretti, whether or not he's part of this resistance infrastructure. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that he is. But until there's definitive evidence that he is, I won't jump to any conclusions. But anybody going to a protest with a loaded firearm, I mean, you don't go to a protest with an unloaded firearm because that would even get you into more trouble. You go to a protest with a loaded firearm, you're exercising your God-given Second Amendment rights. You still have something of a proactive obligation to exercise that with a little more caution, which is to say, when dealing with police officers, you're going to tell them, I'm carrying a firearm. You might not want to get involved in altercations with police officers, even if you think you're being a hero to a woman who you think is being unjustly pepper sprayed. It's not victim blaming to state the obvious of what happens when situations escalate from 0 to dead in 3 seconds. But it's interesting to see Trump bypassing the ordinary chain of command, although Caroline Levitt wouldn't describe it that way. There's an emergency. There's a national weather emergency. So get her out of there. Bring up Tom Homan, who has been damn good from day one, and see what he can do in Minnesota. By the way, he had a phone gun. I didn't say he had the gun in his hands. He had the gun on his body. I think a lot of people are embarrassed about some of the news that they were reporting about him having pulled the gun, not identifying that the guy holding the guy's gun was actually the ICE agent who had disarmed him. But you know, there have been a number. It's a known thing among concealed carries. If you're concealed carrying, your interactions with police officers need to be different. You may not like it. Athabasca, go watch yesterday's show. There's a difference between blaming him and saying these are reasonably foreseeable consequences, which is why you don't do things like that in the first place. It's like, don't blame the victim. You know, she was just walking the streets at night. It's like, okay, good. You don't need to blame the victim to say it's reasonably foreseeable that if you dress in a certain way and you go out in certain parts of the neighborhood, you are inviting problems that you would not otherwise invite. So while it will be a tragedy if something happens and it might not be your fault, you are maximizing or at least increasing the odds of something terrible happening. The man had a concealed carry firearm. He got involved, whether you think righteously or not. And in those moments, it's nice to, as far as I'm concerned, it's nice to have the luxury of, you know, watching in slow motion, going back frame by frame and saying, oh, you see, as of this moment, he didn't have the firearm in his holster anymore, as if you could even know that he only had one gun on him. And 1.5 seconds later, in a moment of stress, the shit hits the fan. But that's it. Tom Homan's going up there, and I think things will start getting a little bit better. I do think that even Minnesotans, in as much as they don't want to see even activists getting shot in the streets, they don't want to see their cities turning into insurrectionist cities. And that's where Minneapolis, Minnesota have gone. Declare them as such, come in and prosecute Governor Walz and Mayor Frei if they insist on defiantly, effectively, openly fighting against enforcement of federal law and actively participating in protecting criminals. Period.